JB, as I said, there are a lot of moving parts in play ahead of finals. We are top 4 undecided. We are top 8 undecided. We've decided that there is going to be one unlucky team, and we are going to get to that a little bit later on. But there are definitely some interesting watches on both the top 4 and the top 8 race. As it stands, Crows top of the ladder, 60 points. Pies, 60 points as well. High flying with percentage, the Crows, 144. The Lions have that half game in hand in third, so they're between sort of second and fourth. Geelong are coming with a bullet, 56, and their soft run home. And then there's Freo, the Suns have a game in hand, Hawthorn, GWS and the Dogs, who you suspect will be battling it out for those last couple of spots in the 8. So for all the, and I use that term again, doom and gloom about the last few weeks about how the season isn't all that close and the top teams are belting the lower ranked teams, there is going to be a bit of a fight to the death here for one of these teams, and there is going to be a good team miss out. I think you were going through the ladder permutations before, and you said it could be a team with as many as 15 wins that misses out.
I have a variation of the ladder predict. I'm going to stop doing ladder predictors after today. By the
How many have you done?
Too many. I'm done with them now. I had a variation with like Hawthorn winning 15 games and still missing the finals, which is actually, and that I was trying to do realistic results as well. So I think it just means in the last 3 weeks, every single game just matters that little bit more, which obviously generates more interest. We're engaged in what the run home now looks like. Yep. But there's only, what, 1 or 2 of those games every week from here, which is kind of disappointing. You talk about the Brisbane-Collingwood game from the weekend and the most watched games. Like, there's going to be so many exciting games with a lot of eyeballs on it, but so many games that just mean nothing as well. But regardless, it's an exciting finish, and it just sets up a really entertaining final series.
Correct. So Collingwood is the one that everyone's talking about this week after the loss to Brisbane. So they've been top for, I think, 12 or 13 weeks leading into this, and they've now sort of given that up to Adelaide. Their last 4 weeks has been a little bit sort of neither here nor there from the Pies. So they've obviously had a few people out and injuries, and they've got players coming back, and we'll sort of get to that. But their run home as well now is very tough, and you've talked about this for a few weeks. So they've got Hawthorn this week, Thursday night, then they have Adelaide away, and they have Melbourne. So it's not an easy run at all. But their form coming into these last few weeks, and we talked about the runway last week, Christian, hasn't been that great.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of drop-offs, that you can look at across the thing. But one of the main areas for them is just their ability to go from half-back to score or just to get inside 50. And all year I've been banging on about that. That's the number one launch zone now, is if you can score off half-back, sort of, win the ball back 90 to 100 metres from goal, or even a bit further, and you've got all that sort of space to play with, how well you do that. They scored the second most points from defensive midfield from the first 17 rounds of the season. Converted those chains the most into a score. So if they started a chain in the defensive midfield, round 0 to 17, they were scoring 21.5% of the time, which ranked number 1. And points they were scoring was 22.5 points per game, which was second. They're now down to 10.5 points per game from that zone, which is 15th. And when they do start a chain, only 15% of those turning into a score, which is 10th. Is
that fewer chains started? So are they intercepting less in that defensive midfield zone?
Pretty much the same amount of zones. As I said, they're 6% less likely to score from those from that zone alone now. A lot of that score per inside 50 stuff, so I spoke about on the podcast previously as well. You're more likely to probably score from an inside 50 that you do generate from the back half than rather if you sort of get those repeat entries. It allows the opposition to sort of clog your forward 50, and it's actually harder to score from a repeat entry than it is from a nice pure back half entry. So that's all, the inability to move the ball from that half back line has also killed their ability to score per inside 50. Second best at round 0 to 17, dropped down to 14th now. And then just looking at sort of just what they're doing with the ball in hand. So they're handballing the ball the second most often of any team now. So the second lowest kick to handball ratio. It was 7th highest from round 0 to 17. So forcing themselves to handball more, whether that's the opposition bringing a bit more pressure and actually taking away their options further out the field, or whether it's just them sort of trying, not being as confident to kick the ball forward because they're going to lose that confidence.
I don't think it's something they want to do, because Craig McRae did say after the game that they were handballing the ball way too much.
Yeah.
He was telling him to kick the bloody ball.
Yeah, and uncontested marks, they're taking 20 fewer per game in the last 4 weeks than they were at the start. So we spoke about the runway last week. We said Collingwood was the last team. They were 3-3 in the last 6 weeks of 2023 and went home to win the flag. Comparing the two numbers, I mean, at the moment they're 1-3 as part of the runway. It's a different sort of thing. So the problem with their 2023 Magpies was they weren't winning territory. They were really good at scoring per inside 50. They were still the second best team in that runway at scoring per inside 50. Had a pretty potent forward line. They were just losing the inside 50 count. They were losing the clearances, and the ball was ending up one way. Whereas this year, it's completely different. They're not as bad in territory. They've still got a good inside 50 differential, but it's when they do have to go from half back to to forward line or to score, they're just not being able to do it better. So that to me sort of suggests, without going into a deep dive of every opposition and what they've done against them, they're sort of being figured out rather than just sort of not getting their hands to the ball or sort of not being as good in contested possession and things like that. Those numbers are sort of stacking up and staying the same. It's just their ability to actually move the ball from one end to the other. They've changed, as Craig McRae said, they've changed the way they're using the ball, and their success rate has dropped right away because of it.
So, JB, you're a Collingwood fan. You look at this run home. Hawthorn at the G Thursday night. Adelaide away. Admittedly, a team that they have the wood over. They're the Crows of their bunnies.
Adelaide will be starting favourite, though.
But they will start favourite. This is a different Adelaide side than what we've seen over the past, 10 years, I guess, 8 years since they last made finals and a grand final. And Melbourne, who you pointed out before, was only beaten by the Pies by a point on King's birthday.
Yeah.
So these are three tough teams.
Yeah, they are. But their form and the loss of Brisbane, another tough team, and Fremantle and Gold Coast, they are losing to good teams. Geelong after the siren as well. But their stretch of form was a little bit, I don't know how to say it, but they struggled to get past St Kilda until the last quarter.
Yeah.
They struggled to get past West Coast, who were up at half.
They haven't played their best footy for a while, and they're still second on the
by
ladder.
1 point as well. They only beat Tigers last week by 5 or 6 goals. It was a competitive match. So their form wasn't that strong. Then they lose against Gold Coast and Fremantle and Brisbane.
I mean, and the
I'm
Gold
not sure
Coast
they were
game,
that far ahead.
Gold Coast game goalless at half time.
Yeah.
Such
And
an
the other one
anomaly,
for me,
yeah.
I know Freo was only 1 point, but it's at the MCG. So of the last 3 games at the MCG, they've only won one, which was against Richmond. So that's sort of the things you've never seen under Craig McRae before, the inability to win at the MCG, the inability to win close games.
I reckon the first half of the season, it was their inability to defend ball movement was their biggest issue. But now it is that going forward and actually scoring per inside 50 and being efficient, which they haven't been. But I don't know, I think a lot of that can come down to no Jeremy Howe. It's probably understated how important he is to that back line. I reckon there were 2 areas going into this season where they lacked a little bit of depth, and that, overall they've got good depth, but it's key defensive stocks and small forward stocks.
So
they got one of the best mosquito fleets in Elliott, Schultz, McCreery, Bobby Hill. But McCreery, Schultz and Hill haven't played together now I think it's since the last time they played Hawthorn in round 12, so it's 10 weeks. So, I don't know, I think Frampton and Howe coming back probably helps this. More intercepts, as you said. But they just weren't that far ahead, I don't think, in the middle part of the year.
I think that, you talk about, or in the past it's been talked about how the top teams probably don't benefit from the pre-finals bye as well. Having that week off, it makes it not easier, but more likely that teams that are coming with a bit of a bullet can rest up and recuperate for finals. I think this will benefit Collingwood a lot because you've got Howe, Frampton, McCreery coming back, these kind of guys. Jordan De Goey will be better for the run and can build a bit of fitness and get there. Hill, as you say, better for the run. So there is room for improvement, and the room for improvement is quite high, I feel. The ceiling is quite high still for the Pies. And if you're going to back any coach to kind of have a plan to figure out and fix this sort of stuff, it's someone like Craig McRae.
Yeah, there's positives to them, there's negatives, but I think overall it is important not to overreact. They are a very good team. They are a premiership contender, but they are one of a lot of premiership contenders.
So from a team that's got a really tough run home to a team which has possibly one of the easiest runs home of all time, Geelong is cruising after beating St Kilda, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide. They had a couple of losses earlier on to teams thereabouts as well, so we obviously won't discount. But the Cats have Essendon at home, Sydney away, and then Richmond at the MCG to close out the year. And they are coming very, very hard. They are currently sitting 4th on the ladder, and you suspect they'll probably only keep winning from here.
There's a reason why I tipped and have been tipping the Geelong-Adelaide Grand Final this year. And I think they're both very good teams. I know we're going to speak about Geelong right now, but very good double-ups for them this season.
Yeah.
Very good double-ups.
We'll go into this because you were sort of looking at the fixture, and of course it is luck a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it is
And they are a very good team.
And they are a very good team, and they have banked the wins when they need to, and they've obviously, they're in the position.
It's not why they're going to play finals, but it's not the reason, but it's a reason, of which there are many
We'll go through,
very good teams.
deep dive into their fixture.
Well, we all know how the fixture works. We all know it's just stupid the way that the AFL does this. You break the ladder up into 3 groups of 6 at the end of every season. If you finish in the top 6, so you play in at least a semi-final, which the Cats did, they played in a prelim, means you're a top 6 team that year. That means you play 3 top 6 teams
twice from that year.
The next year, twice. 2 middle 6 teams, so 7th to 12th, and 1 bottom 6 team. Now, it's the luck of the draw because it is randomised, but you had Adelaide as a bottom 6 team last year. The one bottom 6 team Geelong got was Richmond. Now,
Fortunate.
just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yep.
Well done. But they could have had Adelaide, who are now a premiership contender, right?
Yeah.
Which is what
Flip of the
some
coin,
top
right?
6
Sometimes
teams
it happens.
got.
Yep.
One of the top 6 teams they got twice is Port Adelaide, who is the biggest slider this year. The 2 middle 6 teams from last year that they got to play twice this year was Essendon and St Kilda, who were the 2 worst middle 6 teams last year because they finished 11th and 12th, who are now bottom 6 teams this year. Now that's okay. You can only beat who is in front of you, but they got
Who's in front of them is pretty weak.
they're punishing who they need to punish, and good on them. But I'm not sure if it's a positive going into September.
So I'm looking at this like it's Geelong's flag to lose. And I know that you said that Adelaide is one of the
highest ranked Victorian-based teams.
They have to, I mean, looking at the fixture they've been given, they have to make a grand final. And they probably have to win the flag. Because they've just been, they're just going to be in that position where it works out for them until the final Saturday in September. And they have been smashing teams in the lead up. So like the form is hot.
They'll be well rested. But you see that as
so-
for an older team.
I mean, just look at the last 4 weeks. They're averaging 138.7 points per game in that time. So I know they're trying to get Jeremy Cameron to the 100. You keep asking me each week whether he'll make it. If they keep putting up numbers like that, probably. Time in forward half differential, they're plus 21 minutes and 25 seconds per game. So they're just smashing it there. The number 1 team for moving it from back half to inside 50. Only the 3rd team actually converting an inside 50 into a score, which is 52.7% of the time they get an inside 50 into score. But they're averaging 64 entries in that time, which is 9 more than any other team. So doing it really easy. But that's the flip side of it. And, you know, you can see if they, God forbid, if they went out in straight sets or something, the questions will come, was the draw too soft on the run home? So looking at just the pressure that they played in, their match pressure factor at the moment in the last 5 weeks I've looked at is 181. So only GWS is lower in that time with a match pressure factor of 178. So Freo sort of put to the sword by Carlton this week. Collingwood and Brisbane had a great sort of battle. Adelaide, Hawthorn. So a lot of teams are sort of getting that finals ready into them. And you spoke about who Geelong got left. They got Essendon, Sydney and Richmond. So there's probably, you know, maybe Sydney at the SCG might give them a little bit of a test, but there's no other finalists that they're actually going to touch base with leading into the final. So it's just an interesting one. As I said, 65 inside 50s and 138 points per game. It's all rosy, but you can't expect that into the final. So
would you rather have a soft draw going into September, or would you rather be tested like the Pies?
yeah, I'd rather. Yeah, if you're giving me the last 6 games, give me probably 2 against finalists at least. You know,
Okay, so okay, happy medium, obviously.
Yeah,
but if you had to pick one of the
they're
extremes,
not even in the medium. They're if you're going to pick one of the extremes, I'll take the extreme of finalist. Yeah, every week, then soft draw.
I tried to rank every team 1 to 18 in terms of easiest to hardest fixture today, only looking at who their double up games were this season.
Yeah.
And Geelong, based on the average ladder position of their double up teams, had the 3rd or will have the 3rd easiest fixture in the comp. That's as the top 6 team from last year who made a prelim. 3 of the other top 6 teams from last year, Hawthorn, Port Adelaide and Brisbane, have 3 of the 4 hardest fixtures. So there's a massive comparison.
Yeah.
And I'm not writing them off by any means, but you look at the 2 teams that they did play in that from that top 6 were Brisbane, and they've had 2 games against Brisbane and the Giants, and they're the only losses they've had this year. Well, they've been beaten by Brisbane, been beaten by the Giants twice, had a loss against St Kilda and a loss against Carlton. But the losses against Giants are the ones that I look at and sort of, you look at what did the Giants do and what have teams done against Geelong to actually beat them. It's the ability to just spoke about Collingwood not being able to move the ball from halfback. Geelong, it's if you can move the ball from halfback again, if you can actually. Just spoke about 65 inside 50s and sort of dominating in that area. But it's teams that have been able to go end-to-end against them that have really troubled Geelong. So when Geelong has won this year, they've conceded 28 points from back half chains from the opposition, which is sort of mid-table. When they lose, they concede 48 points from back half chains, which is the most of any side in losses. So you think about North Melbourne's big losses, West Coast and some of the scores they've given up. No team has given up more back half points than Geelong has. So take away their uncontested marks as well. So keep them from, they take 98 uncontested marks in wins, 71 in losses. So that's them with ball in hand. They love to play the outside game, chip it around and find as much space as they can. But I think the teams that have had great success against Geelong have been able to sort of go that end-to-end against them. You can't beat them in time in forward half. You're not going to get a lot of forward half stoppages and forward half intercepts with the likes of Stewart bringing the ball out, Holmes bringing the ball out, Bailey Smith, and that. They've got really good ball movers. But if you can sort of, and it's what Giants do well, is they react pretty well this year. Giants have been pretty good at moving the ball from one end to the other. That's the key of beating Geelong. Sort of like sit back, let them come to you, and if you can get them going the other way, that's where they're vulnerable.
So it doesn't mean they're not a good team because they are, but they're taking advantage of the fixture. And
let's stress that for all the Cats fans out there. Jake is not on this podcast, so he's not going to be talking too much crap about Geelong. But we are saying,
what did I say? Making mountains.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and in hindsight, Geelong have been gifted a great draw.
Yep.
So they really need to take advantage of it. And they can win the flag, and probably should win the flag.
Yep.
And they are currently taking advantage of it, and they'll probably continue to until September. And then once September rolls around, I mean, who knows the way that the finishing places are and who they face, but they're my premiership favourite.
Yeah, obvious premiership tip right now.
Yeah,
for me.
The Crows, odds on to finish top though, and we did talk about that and having to obviously have a home final would be great, potentially 2 home finals, but then there is that caveat of having to come back to the MCG, which is why you probably think the highest ranked Victorian team is probably going to be the favourite.
Yeah.
But they finish with West Coast away. They finish with then Collingwood, which will be a tough one, and then North Melbourne away. So a couple of away games, but against lower ranked teams, and then that cracker on a Saturday night against the Pies in the second last round. The Crows have been showing great signs. I mean, offensively, they are extremely potent, and we've seen that someone like Tex, who's, how old is he, 35? Still coming up clutch late in games and kicking from 50 out and from the pocket and all this sort of stuff. And the defence has stood up wonderfully. The midfield is probably now the third of the ground where you might say maybe that's the weakest part of the ground. But that's still pretty strong. You've got Jordan Dawson, who's the skipper of that side and potentially could be All-Australian captain, leading the way there.
Yep.
So there's not really a massive, detraction about the Crows at the moment.
Yeah, the only thing that I will say is, when comparing them to all the other teams and all the other finalists and things like that, it's their ball movement sort of bottom 5. So what I just spoke about, how to beat Geelong.
So don't come against
Adelaide
Geelong.
don't do that well. So Adelaide are more likely to sort of, instead of going a clean chain end to end, yes, they defend very well, probably sort of happy to get another stoppage on the wing, go again, get it forward, maybe forward half intercept. They don't have the number one pure ball movement. In finals, usually it becomes more of a contest game, and it will be interesting to see this year. So we can go probably into a bit of a deep dive next week if you want. But the control chaos stuff that we spoke about.
Did this last year about
the podcast.
Yep.
It's really turned this year. So a lot of home and away seasons have been 50-50 split between control and chaos. I think 70% of games this year have been control. Teams are really looking at
uncontested marks.
Yeah, uncontested marks, transition being the key to winning.
So chaos versus control. So chaos is when there are more ground balls and uncontested marks, and a control game is when there's more uncontested marks than ground balls.
Yes.
So
Which is the finals game, and yet teams want to go the other way.
Well, it's interesting. It's always been a 50-50 split in home and away, and then control, and then chaos reigns supreme in finals. This is just a question mark in this year's finals with control being such a 20% more likely for games to be control this year than it is to be chaos. Will the finals track that way as well? Are we going to actually see a finals where it's actually predominantly ball movement? If it is, that's where Adelaide may get left behind. Sure. But you do know that in finals, same as the Adelaide Hawthorn game probably on Friday night was a great example of that.
Yeah.
It was take your chances, momentum, a lot of crash and bash footy. So that was more of a final.
Kick accurately.
And they got the job done in that one. So
am I wrong?
Adelaide...
Was that game supposed to be flipped on expected score as well? Was that game? There was a game. Sorry, I'm throwing you under the bus here. Anyway, let's sort of move down. We can come back to that, JB. And then the Suns obviously have the game in hand. So they are currently 6th, but they're a game behind. So 56 points would get them up to as high as, well, probably not that high, but they jump up another spot.
Yep.
I would suspect that they're probably safe. They play Carlton away, they then host GWS, they have Port Adelaide away, and then Essendon at home. I think they're making finals.
I've got them in the top 4, yeah. And I think they're going to be the ones that leapfrog Collingwood, at least into 3rd, I reckon.
Okay.
Just because of those percentage boosters they get at the end of the season, Port Adelaide and Essendon. Remember, they know what they need to do against Essendon in that bye week as well.
Huge, wouldn't it? Just the first final series ever, and you get the double. You might not get the home final first week.
It won't be. Probably.
But gee, if you win, you get a home prelim.
The biggest game for them is obviously the GWS game.
Yeah.
That could determine top 4 for them. But if they win that, they're basically, in my eyes, guaranteed top 4.
Well, like a lot of these teams in the second half of the top 8, they just need to keep winning.
Yeah.
So the Lions, obviously, we talked about, play Sydney at home, then Fremantle away, which is going to be a tough one, and then Hawthorn at home at the Gabba. So a couple of, not 50-50s, ones they'd probably be favoured in.
But the thing, there's going to be an upset in there.
There will be, exactly right. So I've got the Lions finishing 5th after all that. So I don't know. I think they're still comfortably a finalist. They could still slip, but who misses out from here, JB? Could be the Hawks. Collingwood, Melbourne, Brisbane to finish. Could be the Dogs. And Christian came up with a great stat before. The Dogs could miss with a percentage above 130%. And they would be comfortably the best side in terms of percentage to miss the 8 in the top 8 era.
Yep.
So St Kilda in 2012 had a percentage of 123.3. The Dogs currently have a percentage of 137.3. And they could miss finals.
But how is that? I mean, they're obviously a very good team, and whoever misses is going to be stiff, as you said. But the stark contrast in the ability between the bottom 9 and the top 9 teams, is that aiding the Western Bulldogs' percentage as well? Because they're beating up on the lower teams.
I get what you're saying, but everyone's
Percentage doesn't matter if you're a game behind.
Yeah,
I know,
everyone's
but-
playing the same. GWS is sort of, haven't had the exact same draw, but GWS are only on 111% this year, and Gold Coast similar and things like that. So, yes, there might be a little bit in that, but you can only beat what's put in front of you, as we keep saying. And the Bulldogs, I keep saying that percentage is a great indicator of just did we win or lose the season.
Yeah.
And they've actually smashed it this season in terms of for and against. So.
But in terms of the gap between the top teams and the bottom teams, obviously that's so high. They just happen to be, right now at least, the bottom team of the top teams.
Yeah.
Makes sense of that.
I'll say it will be Hawthorn that miss with absolutely zero confidence, because I can still see them finishing a lot higher than that.
I've done my ladder predictors and I have Hawthorn missing as well. I think Collingwood, Melbourne and Brisbane to end the year is tough. They might win one of those, maybe against Melbourne. I don't think they win Friday night, and I don't think they win against Brisbane at the Gabba.
Thursday night.
Thursday night,
I
apologies.
think, I wouldn't be surprised if they won.
Yeah.
I think Collingwood's the better team, but Hawthorn can still win that. I've got a ladder predictor, one of my 473 here, where they win that and still miss finals.
And then lastly, I think the Dockers, I know that we've sort of talked them up a fair bit this season, but gee, it could happen again. They could miss as well. So they've got Port Adelaide away, Brisbane at home. So if the Lions win, if they somehow lose to Port Adelaide, and then it comes down to Western Bulldogs away at Marvel Stadium to end the season, you could almost find the Dockers out of the top 8 as well for a second straight year on the last weekend of the season.
I'm not fussed about, Fremantle's a really young team. So next year's the year where they can genuinely contend. They'll probably make finals this year, but you know what we could get? A few double up back-to-back week matches, like the Western Bulldogs against Freo and Brisbane versus Hawthorn as well.
Oh, as in elimination finals, backing onto one another.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating.
Keep an ace up the sleeve in one of those.
So many machinations, and look, it will be an interesting finish to the season. I know that we on this podcast as well have sort of talked about the quality of the season, maybe not being as high as previous years, but the race for the finals, the race for the top 4 is heating up, and it is looking nice.